Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on benthic invertebrates in the headwaters of the Athabasca watershed. My name is Sarah McDonald. I'm the Watershed Science Coordinator with the Athabasca Watershed Council, and we're joined today by John Swan and Diane Edwards from ABI Environmental. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Feel free to keep your video and microphones muted as we go through this presentation, and use the chat function as much as you like. We will plan to address all questions at the end of this presentation. And I'd like to just acknowledge that the Athabasca Watershed Council is working throughout the Athabasca watershed, including Treaty 6, 8, and 10 territories and the Métis Nations of Alberta Region 1 and 4. This project is financially supported by Alberta Conservation Association and Alberta Eco Trust, so we're very thankful to them for this. We have a door prize at the end of this presentation, so feel free to stay till the end and have your name drawn. So today we'll be talking a little bit about why we are collecting the benthic invertebrates, a little bit about the project, and then John will take over and talk a little bit about the benthic invertebrates that were collected. So what are benthic invertebrates? They're the bugs that are found at the bottom of bodies of water, and there can be small aquatic animals or the aquatic larval stages of insects. And John will go a little bit more into this later on in the presentation. So why benthic invertebrates? They're a good indicator of water quality and ecosystem health. Their pollution tolerance varies greatly among species. So some species are super tolerant to water qualities or changes in water quality, and other species are not as tolerant. So that can tell us if there is a water quality issue in the streams we're sampling. They're also a food supply to species at risk in the eastern slopes where we're sampling. Athabasca rainbow trout and bull trout are in the area, and they're of a great importance and concern right now. The project was initiated May 2020. We applied for funding in April 2020, and we attended an Eastern Slopes Collaborative meeting during 2020 and 2022. And that helped us collaborate and get the project started. We also had cabin training in Crow's Nest Pass, September 2020. We had cabin training with another staff member in Rocky Mountain House, July 2021, and that enabled us to collect samples October 2021 as well, with 2 staff trained. So the Eastern Slopes Collaborative that I've mentioned a few times is an aquatic monitoring collaborative with several groups: Living Lakes Canada, Old Man Watershed Council, Environment and Climate Change Canada, just to name a few. And in this collaborative, we're working along the eastern slopes just because of an increase in human activity along that region. We wanted to make sure that groups are completing a standardized sampling protocol along that area, just to make sure the data that we're collecting is somewhat standardized. So what is the cabin protocol? What is the stream project? John will mention this a little bit more again in his presentation, but basically the cabin protocol is collecting benthic invertebrates in the same way, kicking in the net in that picture that I have there. That's me in the water at training, kicking the bugs for 3 minutes and doing a zigzag pattern that John will talk a little bit more about. And then we're also contributing to the Sequencing the Rivers for Environment Assessment and Monitoring project by the University of Guelph, where we take samples and we send it to them, and they basically blend up the samples and see all of the benthic invertebrates that are there. And some invertebrates are not visible to the human eye, so it's great to know what other species that we aren't seeing are in our samples. So before we got started, we did a bit of research and found that it was quite data deficient. We had some data deficiencies in some parts of the upper Athabasca region, the headwaters of the Athabasca. So in that square, we see the McLeod watershed, and there wasn't very many benthic invertebrates being collected in that area. We also noticed that in the Pembina subwatershed, there were little benthic invertebrates being collected too. So we hopefully next year we'll be able to get out to the Pembina as well to collect some bugs. Before in 2015, 2016, there was an Upper Athabasca community-based monitoring project that was ongoing, and they did tons of work in the Upper Athabasca. This project occurred 2015, 2016. They collected benthic invertebrate samples, sediment quality, and water quality data, and they also assessed that data for heavy metals. And everything I'm mentioning today will be in the chat. So if you want to learn more about this project, please check out the chat. Ashley, I think, is putting links to it in there. So our collection sites were Solomon Creek, and the black dots on the screen there are our sample sites. And we did Solomon Creek, Greg River, Whitehorse Creek, and McLeod River. And John will just mention more about that too in his presentation. So in the field, you can see we had me, Petra, and Paula were out there. Just basically what we did, we would go out and we would do a primary site assessment, kind of describing the land use of the area and drawing the location of our sample sites. Then we looked at the habitat of the area. So the riffles, the canopy coverage, the streamside vegetation. Then we took some water quality samples. You can see Paula in one of those pictures down there, getting ready to grab some water quality samples. Then we took some channel data, and you can see Petra and Paula also in one of those pictures doing a pebble count. And then after that, I would do the kicking of the bugs into the net, and then try to put all those bugs into some sample jars. So that's kind of the beginning, just the background of our project. And now I'll hand it over to John and Diane to share their screen.